Winter was never unexpected in the Viking world. Long before snow appeared or ice formed along the shore, people could feel the shift. The air grew sharper. The daylight shortened. The land slowly stopped giving. These changes were not ignored. For Vikings, winter was not a surprise event. It was a certainty, and certainty demanded preparation. As summer faded, daily life began to change quietly. There were no dramatic announcements, no urgent commands. People simply adjusted. Food became the center of attention. Not hunger, not fear. Planning. Vikings understood something deeply practical. Winter did not punish the unprepared immediately. It punished them slowly. That made it far more dangerous. Inside Viking homes, meals began to change as autumn approached. Portions became more measured. Nothing was thrown away casually. Food was treated with respect. Eating was no longer only about satisfaction. It became an act of awareness. People paid attention to how much they consumed and how much remained. They learned to think beyond the present day. Inside the longhouse, storage areas gained new importance. Food was not hidden away and forgotten. It was checked, moved, and counted mentally. Everyone knew what existed and what did not. This awareness created discipline. Winter did not reward optimism. It rewarded honesty. As outdoor work slowly decreased, indoor work increased. Supplies were inspected regularly. Anything at risk of spoiling was dealt with early. These tasks were repetitive and quiet, but repetition created confidence. Men and women shared responsibility naturally. No single person was in charge of winter survival. That responsibility belonged to the household, and households were never truly alone. Viking communities were small and closely connected. People knew who lived nearby. They knew who had strong stores and who might struggle. This knowledge shaped behavior. Quiet hoarding was dangerous. If one household failed, it affected others. Winter demanded cooperation. As autumn deepened, the atmosphere inside Viking homes shifted. Voices lowered. Movement slowed. Not from fear, but from focus. Food preparation changed as well. Warm meals became more important than variety. Simple dishes were favored because they could be shared and stretched. Cooking slowed. Food simmered longer, drawing nourishment from small amounts. Heat was used carefully, never wasted. These habits were not signs of hardship. They were signs of experience. Vikings had survived many winters before. They trusted what worked. By the time frost appeared on the ground and darkness began to dominate the day, there was no panic inside Viking homes. There was readiness. Having enough food through winter was not about clever tricks. It was about months of quiet discipline. People respected limits. They accepted restraint. Winter did not forgive mistakes, so Vikings learned to live in a way that avoided them. When winter fully arrived, life inside Viking homes settled into a steady rhythm. Outside, the land became quiet and unyielding. The soil hardened. The sea grew unpredictable. Travel slowed or stopped entirely. Inside, food became the central concern of daily life. Not because it was scarce, but because it had limits. Vikings understood that winter food was not meant to feel abundant. It was meant to be sufficient. Meals during winter were simple and consistent. There was little variation from day to day, and that was intentional. Consistency created stability. People ate enough to stay strong, but never until they were completely full. This was not punishment. It was discipline. Eating lightly allowed food stores to last longer. It also kept the body alert rather than sluggish. Warmth mattered more than variety. Hot meals were valued above all else. Food was often eaten slowly, allowing heat to spread through the body. This made even modest portions feel sustaining. Inside Viking homes, eating was a shared experience. People ate together whenever possible, not out of ceremony but out of practicality. Eating together allowed everyone to observe one another. If someone appeared weak or unwell, it was noticed immediately. Winter did not allow isolation. Food distribution was not random. Households paid close attention to how much each person consumed. This was not control, it was awareness. Those who worked harder on a given day were given slightly more. Those resting were expected to accept less without complaint. This balance was understood and accepted. Complaining about food during winter was seen as ignorance, not hardship. People knew that winter was long. Short-term satisfaction was less important than long-term survival. Cooking during winter followed the same philosophy. Meals were prepared slowly, often simmered for hours. This allowed flavors to deepen and nourishment to spread evenly. Nothing was rushed. Rushing wasted fuel. Fuel mattered as much as food. Inside the longhouse, food storage areas were checked constantly. Supplies were rotated, moved closer to the fire if needed, then returned to cooler areas. Moisture was the enemy. Damp food spoiled quickly and threatened the entire household. Preventing spoilage was as important as rationing. Men and women shared this responsibility naturally. No one saw food management as a lesser task. It was survival work. Winter meals were rarely eaten in silence. Conversation was calm and practical. People discussed weather, supplies, and plans for the days ahead. There was comfort in predictability. Knowing what tomorrow's meal would be removed uncertainty. Uncertainty drained energy faster than cold. If a household noticed that their food stores were lower than expected, they did not hide this information. They spoke quietly with neighbors. Viking communities survived winter together or not at all. Food was shared cautiously, not generously. Enough to keep everyone stable, never enough to create imbalance. This sharing was not charity. It was strategy. A weak household endangered the entire community. Inside Viking homes, winter eating habits taught restraint, patience, and trust. Trust that preparation would last. Trust that others would act responsibly. Trust that the winter would eventually pass. Food was never taken for granted. Every meal was a reminder of effort made months earlier. This awareness shaped Viking character more than hunger ever could. Winter was not defeated by abundance. It was endured through discipline. As winter stretched on, the greatest challenge was no longer the cold. It was time. Days grew shorter until daylight felt almost symbolic. Some mornings arrived with only a faint gray light before darkness returned again. Inside Viking homes, this darkness changed how people lived. Energy became precious. People moved more slowly, not out of weakness but intention. Every action was measured. Nothing was rushed without reason. Winter demanded conservation, not just of food, but of strength. Vikings understood that exhaustion was dangerous. A tired body burned more calories. A tired mind made poor decisions, so they adapted. Work was paced carefully. Tasks were spread throughout the day instead of completed all at once. Frequent rest was accepted, not criticized. Inside the longhouse, people stayed close to the fire. Not constantly, but often enough to maintain warmth without wasting fuel. Fuel management mattered as much as food management. A fire that burned too high consumed wood quickly. A fire that burned too low invited cold and dampness. Balance was everything. Meals during this period became even more consistent. Predictability helped the body adjust. People knew exactly when they would eat and what they would eat. This removed anxiety. Uncertainty cost energy. Eating on a regular schedule allowed the body to function efficiently. Warm food at expected times stabilized both strength and mood. Inside Viking homes, winter meals also served another purpose. They marked time. In a season where days blurred together, meals became anchors. They divided the darkness into manageable segments. Between meals, people focused on quiet tasks. Tools were repaired. Clothing was checked and adjusted. Supplies were reorganized again and again. These actions were not strictly necessary every day, but they provided structure. Structure kept the mind steady. Conversation during long winter weeks was calm and purposeful. People spoke about weather patterns, past winters, and future plans. These conversations reminded everyone that winter was temporary. It had always ended before. Silence was common, but not uncomfortable. Silence conserved energy. It allowed people to listen, to the fire, to the house, to the wind outside. Listening mattered. Changes in sound often signaled changes in weather. Experienced ears noticed these details. Inside the longhouse, trust deepened during the long winter. People depended on one another not just for food, but for steadiness. A single careless decision could affect everyone. This awareness created restraint. No one took more than they needed. No one ignored the limits of the household. Food shortages, when they occurred, were managed quietly. Meals were adjusted slightly. Portions were reduced evenly. No one was singled out. No one was blamed. Winter hardship was shared. This sharing preserved dignity. Inside Viking homes, winter taught a critical lesson. Survival was not about pushing harder. It was about enduring longer. Those who tried to fight winter burned themselves out. Those who respected it lasted. Food lasted because people adjusted themselves to it. They matched their needs to what was available, not the other way around. As the darkest weeks passed, people did not celebrate prematurely. They remained cautious. Winter was not finished simply because it felt familiar. But familiarity helped. It removed fear. Inside Viking homes, long winters shaped habits that lasted beyond the season. Patience, discipline, control. These qualities ensured that food was enough, not because there was always plenty, but because it was used wisely. As winter continued, survival became less about individual households and more about the community as a whole. Viking society was not built for isolation, especially not in winter. Food shortages rarely appeared suddenly. They revealed themselves slowly, through careful observation. People noticed when a household began to eat less, when meals grew smaller than expected, when someone hesitated before sharing food. These signs were not ignored. In Viking communities, silence around hardship was dangerous. If one household weakened, the entire community felt the risk. Winter did not allow fragile links. This understanding shaped how food was shared. Sharing did not mean generosity without limits. It meant balance. Households with stronger stores provided small amounts to those struggling. Not enough to weaken themselves, enough to stabilize others. This exchange was quiet and practical. There were no public gestures, no pride attached to giving, no shame attached to receiving. Everyone understood that winter shifted fortunes constantly. Today, one household might be strong. Tomorrow, it might need help. This awareness kept relationships steady. Food sharing followed strict, unspoken rules. Assistance was temporary. Expectations were clear. Those who received help adjusted their consumption carefully. They accepted restraint without complaint. Winter did not reward entitlement. Inside Viking homes, this system reduced fear. People knew they were not facing winter alone. They also knew they were expected to act responsibly. This balance prevented chaos. No one panicked and consumed too much too early. No one hoarded out of fear of abandonment. Trust was the foundation. Trust that preparation had been done correctly. Trust that neighbors would act with discipline. Trust that winter, however long, would eventually loosen its grip. Meals during this phase of winter were steady but modest. Warmth remained the priority. Energy was conserved whenever possible. People learned to recognize hunger without responding to it impulsively. They distinguished between need and desire. This skill was crucial. Desire wasted resources. Need preserved life. Inside the longhouse, conversations reflected this mindset. People spoke about limits openly. They discussed how long supplies might last under current conditions. These discussions were not pessimistic. They were realistic. Reality allowed planning. Storms might isolate households temporarily. Travel might become impossible for days or weeks. Viking communities accounted for this. They never relied on constant access to others. Each household aimed for independence first, cooperation second. This layered approach made the system resilient. Winter could isolate, but it could not divide completely. When shortages became severe, meals changed again. Portions were reduced evenly. No one was spared. No one was singled out. Shared hardship preserved unity. People accepted this without resentment. Resentment wasted energy and damaged trust. Inside Viking homes, endurance was not dramatic. It was quiet. It looked like steady routines maintained despite discomfort. It sounded like calm voices even when food was limited. This calm was not accidental. It was practiced year after year. By the later stages of winter, people could sense when the worst had passed. The darkness softened slightly. The air shifted. Small signs of change appeared, but no one relaxed fully until it was certain. Winter taught caution. When spring finally approached, it did not arrive as relief alone. It arrived as confirmation. The systems had worked again. Food had lasted. The community had held. Winter did not break Viking society because it was never faced alone. Enough food was not just stored in buildings. It was stored in habits, relationships, and shared discipline. That was the true reason Vikings endured long winters without starving. Not because they had more food than others, but because they used what they had together. When winter finally began to loosen its grip, there was no celebration inside Viking homes. No sudden relief. No sense of victory. Only quiet confirmation. The days grew slightly longer. The cold softened just enough to be noticed. The land showed the first subtle signs that it would soon give again. Inside the longhouse, people felt the change. Not in their stomachs, but in their habits. Food stores were checked one more time. Supplies were reviewed honestly. There was no rush to consume what remained. Vikings did not treat the end of winter as a reward. They treated it as a transition. This mindset explained why they survived so consistently. Winter did not defeat Viking communities because it never found them disorganized. Their strength did not come from abundance. It came from restraint. They understood that food security was not about having more than enough. It was about using what existed without waste, fear, or selfishness. Inside Viking homes, winter taught people to separate comfort from survival. Comfort was welcomed when possible. Survival was non-negotiable. This clarity shaped behavior. People did not panic when food became limited. They adjusted. They did not cling to excess when others needed support. They shared. They did not exhaust themselves trying to maintain summer habits. They changed their pace. These choices were not heroic. They were practical, and practicality saved lives. Winter was not treated as an enemy to be conquered. It was treated as a condition to be endured. This perspective removed fear. Fear caused mistakes. Mistakes cost food, energy, and trust. Inside Viking homes, trust mattered as much as warmth. Trust that preparation had been done properly. Trust that neighbors would act responsibly. Trust that everyone understood the same limits. This shared understanding created stability. Even when conditions were harsh, people knew what to expect from one another. There were no surprises, no sudden collapses. Food lasted not because it was endless, but because it was respected. By the time winter ended fully, people were thinner, slower, and tired. But they were intact. The community remained whole. Spring did not arrive as rescue. It arrived as continuation. Life resumed at a faster pace, but the lessons of winter remained. They carried forward into the next year. Preparation began again almost immediately, not out of anxiety, but out of experience. Vikings did not survive long winters through courage alone. They survived through systems built on discipline, cooperation, and patience. Enough food was not a miracle. It was the result of countless small decisions made consistently over time. Decisions to eat carefully, to share responsibly, to rest when needed, to respect limits. These decisions turned winter from a threat into a test, and one they passed again and again. That is how Vikings managed to have enough food through long winters. Not by overcoming nature, but by understanding it, and by understanding themselves.